Tony D and Little Joan with a screenwriter's rant on Citadel, a new series from the Russo brothers starring, what's the name? Rob Stark as, and I can't pronounce the actress's name, her, as two spies who lost their memories and then gain it back, or at least one of them does. And they work for an agency that has no a loyalty to no nation. And it's Stanley Tucci is in it. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for smash liking and subscribing. Check out my books. Links in the description. Comedy horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 11. 11 has dropped, by the way. I'll be doing a video on it later. There it is. So get your copies of Pineys number 11. The Piney that killed Thomas Edison. All right, so getting back to this. The Russo brothers, they do a good job. They're excellent with, they're excellent with action. As much as I thought The Gray Man was kind of meh, the action was really good. So the action's going to be great. That's most of the movie. That's most of it. This is the Priyanka Chopra Jonas. Wonder if she comes out of Bollywood. I bet she does. So yeah, this has got all kinds of worldwide appeal. It's got action. You got a hot actress, probably from India, I'm guessing, and you got Rob Stark, and Game of Thrones was huge. And Stanley Tucci ain't no slouch. This looks fun. You got guys skiing with machine guns. I mean, this is a TV series, and it looks big. Looks like a movie. I thought it was a movie. But it's going to be about spies. Now, the problem with spy stuff, in my view, is a lot of these guys don't get the real world politics right. And it is very complicated now. But, how do you get something greenlit that's going to maybe say stuff about world affairs, as they are currently? It's a big mess. You have problems getting access to certain military equipment if you shoot these movies and you have the wrong opinions. Then there are guys in the marketing department that said, well, you don't want to talk about that country in a negative light because then we can't market it there, and yada, yada, yada. Back in the day, this wasn't a problem because it was James Bond against the Soviet Union, and they called it Spectre, but it really was the Soviets, and no problem. And if you threw in an evil German, nobody cared because, the time period. Now it's like, oh, everybody's offended by everything, and that kind of filters down into that sort of weird understanding of foreign policy, but it ruins the details, right? So what kind of evil villains do you have in here? Well, you can throw in the Russians, right? Sure, they're always a good foil, and now they're kind of in a bad way. But if you know anything about foreign policy, Ukrainians ain't no slouches in the evil department and in the corruption department. So there's a lot of players in that mess. Then you got the Chinese. The Chinese are, in my view, the big villain on the world stage these days. But if you're going to throw in every Chinese operative and they're going to actually be Chinese, well, then you got a problem with the woke saying, oh, you're making out Asians to be evil. It's a real problem. So, yeah, how do you get around that? How do you get around the North Korean situation? Well, that's easy because you can have a North Korean agent and then you can have a South Korean good agent, right? And then they cancel each other out, and then in the old days, at least you could do that, and then they had a good Korean and a bad Korean, so it's okay. That was like the 90s mentality. Now you have this mentality where Citadel is a spy agency that is not beholden to any government. All right, setting aside how that's going to work, because there's a lot of profit in being very evil on the world stage, and governments do have a ton of money, and they could shut you down. How do you stay independent? But if you could ignore all that, then yeah, you could probably make that concept work. I mean, that's essentially the concept of the Kingsmen. They're a private organization. a private spy agency. So it would get very evil very fast. But this isn't that kind of movie. It's more of a fun movie, action movie, a little bit of romance here between Rob Stark and his co-star. Um, it's the seriousness that you can't. I think you can't get too serious in a movie like this because of what I just described with the foreign policy, right? You're not going to make it very realistic. You're going to have to keep it kind of vague. Oh, it's just this evil organization. It's a terrorist, or it is, it's like what they did in the later James Bond movies, where they made this terrorist character who literally had worked for every terrorist organization on the planet. It made no sense, right? You can't possibly have worked for all those. They're very specific organizations that only accept people of certain cultures or ethnicities to even be in their group. So there are no mercenaries that, fly around the world and just commit evil for money that we don't know about and actively hunt. Part of the real guys who commit these sorts of atrocities is they would work for some of the good guys on occasion, and that's why we even hired them to do various things on the down low, because we knew they were doing bad stuff. That's how they survived. So you kind of can't put that stuff in a movie like this if you want it to be good guys versus bad guys. You want a little gray, but not too much. And the problem with doing spy movies is it was easy to do it against the Soviets, and now it's just a mishmash of a whole bunch of things. You don't even know who's on what side anymore. Although I will say, I think Rob Stark there is Richard Madden. I keep calling him Rob Stark. I think he's English, right? So it could be MI6, ex-MI6 guy, and I'm not sure what agency operates out of, say, India, or maybe she's English too. Like, that gives you a little more leeway because you're not the USA, number one, baby, and you can play with that. But the UK is super sensitive about their politics. In fact, the European countries are all very super sensitive. The French government put out a statement against Wakanda Forever because they didn't like the way they portrayed that. So you see what could happen if you start, rolling out some real interesting details about, real world details about certain governments. They're going to come out and say, this movie is portraying us in a negative light and we think it's racist. And then you have a whole government that won't distribute your movie in a whole country. Maybe that really impacts the movie. That's what these people are ultimately worried about. So that's why you got to kind of, I'm not saying they should, because if I write a story, I want some damn detail in the damn thing. But I'm saying you can't expect, say, the Russo brothers, who have more of a broad appeal with their movies, to really drill down that far in that kind of stuff. It's going to be more about the action sequences. It's going to be more about the romance. It's going to be less of it'll be some MacGuffin. Oh, we got to get it before the bomb explodes or the death ray shoots or whatever. Which is why you can't keep it, if you're going to do this, you shouldn't make it that serious. And this movie isn't quite campy, but it's got a little lightness to it. So that could be fun for a while. But I think it undermines the seriousness when you can't put in those details. So, would I see it? Oh, it's on Prime. I might watch the first one, see how it is. I do love me some Russo brothers, though. So I trust them as creators to make something interesting, even though they have all the limitations I just described. They'll still somehow make it work. They'll create made up shadow organizations that kind of represent certain groups in the real world, but aren't those groups. And that's one of the ways around it, right? So if you want to throw the Chinese and the Russians there, you create a fictional group that kind of mirrors some organization within, say, the Communist Party, but you explain, they actually have agents everywhere and they're very diverse. They actually work for other bad governments too. Like, I don't know, Venezuela, and the socialists there, or the Cubans, and then you can kind of make it work then. So would I see this? Absolutely. I'll probably watch the first episode on Prime. It looks fun, and these guys, yeah, they know what they're doing. And it already looks interesting. I mean, just in the trailer. Interesting action sequences. The dynamic. I don't like the, oh, I forgot who I was and now I have to rediscover it BS. I hate that. I hate that trope. I wish people would drop it. But I'll be willing to forgive it if they get past it in an episode or two. You know? Don't make me go through a long thing. Oh, well, I remember this. Yeah, I don't want to go through that very long. Drop it like in 2 episodes and then maybe. And Stanley Tucci is, hey, he's a pretty decent actor. I think it'll be worth watching. I think it'll be very watchable. Will it be the greatest thing ever? I don't know. Might be. Might be. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Check us out on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble for our more base takes. If you can find a more base take, take it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.